Hey, everybody. Yes, welcome back to episode number 52 of the Paid Search Podcast. My name is Jason Rothman, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, a man whose talented fingers will do magic, not only inside of your AdWords account, but up and down your body. Chris, the strategy slinger, Schaeffer.
Oh, my.
Chris. Everybody, welcome back to episode number 52 of the Paid Search Podcast. Chris, I told you I'm coming in hot, and when I say coming in hot, and when I say I'm going to stick it, I'm going to stick it. So as always, folks, it's great to be joined by Chris, my co-host, the strategy slinger, because you're all about that B2B strategy, Chris. So Chris, how are you doing today, bro?
Well, I'm smiling. That was a unique experience. You know, Jason, you said that our listeners are really always excited to hear how Jason's going to start the show. And,
yes.
Last week
you cut my yes off.
I cut your yes off.
Let me tell you, Chris, in a man's life, there's only one circumcision. Okay. Not two. So you cut my yes off, and I promise you, don't make that happen again.
A little behind the scenes info for our listeners. If you would have heard it, it sounded disappointing. And it was such a poor start to an exciting, an informational podcast, and I just said, you know what, I'm just going to start clean, right? After the yes, and it was. I didn't realize it was a personal blow, and I apologize.
Well, Chris, maybe you did us a favor, maybe not. All I'm going to say is I did get emails about it, and Chris, but we're going to move on. So I forgive you. The people forgive you. I came back today with a banger. I think so. Yeah. And you guys can let me know with the feedback how you like that intro. So, Chris, today, number 52. I'm hyped, man. Isn't working for you common pitfall? This is the stuff we run into every single week. People who use AdWords, we know AdWords works, but for whatever reason, for them, AdWords doesn't seem to be working. So we're going to go through the list today, all people run into with Google AdWords and why it doesn't work for them. We break it down into two different areas on why people have pitfalls with Google AdWords: mindset and then technical issues. So why don't you kick us off here with the mindset? Irrationally optimistic people who think day one everything's going to happen. I know you run into these people. Let us know this problem.
It's difficult to explain to the people that have irrational concepts of what an AdWords campaign can do because they don't think it's irrational. So that's a difficult start. But I'll give you one example, and maybe this might catch some ears on people that do have irrational considerations for an AdWords campaign. I once was talking to a client, and he said that, there are this many people looking for an AdWords campaign, or excuse me, this many people looking for a eye doctor. This much in this area. And he told me, right, of that, we should get this many clicks. So he based his volume of clicks on the interest, or let's say, percentage of people in that population or zip code or county. Okay. So he then assumed that those many people would then convert. If we get that many people, then those people would convert. And so he came up with this astounding number of conversions and clicks and traffic that we would get from a search campaign. And in the end, it was completely impractical. We got a small fraction of that. And so I would say for the people that have irrational concepts, what you have to start with, the basic thing you have to start with is just a basic understanding of how AdWords works and how it does not work. Right. If you know that, then you will no longer have irrational concepts of what AdWords can and cannot do.
Hopefully, once you know if it works, if you won't have irrational. But Chris, that's a great point. It's hard to deal with irrational people because they don't know they're irrational, or else they wouldn't be irrational. But there's a lot of people who fall into the trap thinking that basically every click is going to be conversion. And that's just not the way things work. So overly irrationally optimistic people, that's one of the mindsets that will kill you with AdWords, because it won't work the way you're thinking, and then you'll just stop. So the second mindset issue, Chris, is I call it the measurement fetish. It's just people who go over the top with measuring everything. And we measure conversions, we measure leads, but these are the people that want to know exactly which individual searched which keyword, became which client. And a lot of times these people, since they're overly measuring things, they inaccurately measure things, because sometimes they measure things that there's not a way to measure them. And because of that, they think AdWords really isn't going as good as it is, where really it could be bringing in 75% of their business. So that's something I deal with all the time. The next one, Chris, is a lack of measurement. I don't know about you, but I run into people who I explain how to measure leads and phone calls and all that, and all we have to do is put one piece of code on your website, and they don't do it. And they just say, I don't want to mess with that. So I usually kind of give them the speech, hey, this is super important. It helps me do my job better in terms of getting data and knowing which keywords and ads lead to conversions and all that stuff. But if they're not up for it, they're just not up for it. So what do you do in a situation like that? Do you just kind of let the blind be blind?
You know, that's honestly what happens. Whenever someone doesn't understand the value of conversion tracking, or just lacks, the trust of, tracking conversions in AdWords, they say, well, I know when someone calls, and I know, if AdWords is working or not, although they have no idea who generated that phone call, whether it was an organic or a referral and stuff like that. They might ask, but a lot of times that, unless you're keeping a spreadsheet or something really detailed, you never really know. So in the end, when it comes down to a client that is very set on their ways and does not want to keep tally on that kind of thing, we just kind of say, it appears you're doing well. You have to fall back onto those secondary metrics, which is, it happens. I've done plenty. It
happens, and you and I can manage campaigns where that's the case and still do a good job. But man, it is like a huge lost opportunity when someone could set up conversion tracking or take an afternoon to work with their web developer one time, get the codes on the website, and then the person managing the AdWords account, either freelancer or agency or employee, it really helps them do their job. So people who have a lack of respect for measurement, that's one of the mindsets that can kill you with Google AdWords. The next group, Chris, are people I call hopeless bums. These are people who just give up too quickly. I don't know about you, but I'm working on an AdWords campaign actually for myself right now. I'm like 3 weeks into it, and I'm still making changes every day, changing strategies, trying to figure out that nice strategy that's really going to get me the leads I want at the cost I want. So I usually give it 90 days to change up strategy. That's a little excessive, but sometimes that's what it takes. So do you run into these people who just, if it doesn't work in 2 weeks, they throw up their hands and give up?
Yeah, 2 weeks. I wish I had 2 weeks for some of those people, because I think my record is like 2 days for my shortest campaign ever run before the client says it's not working, and I want my money
now,
back.
Are you able to tell us what kind of industry that was, or would that help you too much?
Oh, sure. It was carpet cleaning, I think, was the most recent one. I don't remember what my shortest one was. Most recent one was 7 days. There was one from several years ago that was, I think, 2 days. I don't remember what that was, but it was service industry is probably one of the worst. They have to get calls every day. We're talking locksmith, carpet cleaners, things like that. People that, you don't think about, when you call and they're chomping at the bit, ready to get, their people working and moving and out of the office. That kind of stuff gets tedious, and they don't get a certain number of calls per day. They're hurting. They're losing money every minute that they don't have somebody out on a job. So it happens, and I understand why, because people know what their bottom line is. They know have to get that stuff out there. They have to get moving, and have to get food on their family, and that's the way it goes.
Yep. But the crazy thing is, sometimes if they would just give it another 2-3 weeks, they could have a system that provides food for their family for the next 10 years. So you just got to give it some time sometimes, and let the AdWords manager figure out a strategy. And the last mindset issue, Chris, is potentially losers, not losers from the start, but potentially losers, people who set it and forget it, people who do a good job with their AdWords account, get things running the way they want, and then just go on pure autopilot and don't check it at all. And they miss out on things like new features that come up. And then the thing that really kills them is competitors every day potentially are trying to make AdWords campaigns that are better than yours. And they come out of the woodwork at any time, and you got to be ready for it to adjust.
Here's one reason I'll give people an idea on why your campaign's failing and why you need to check your account at least once a week. Google has a new feature that catches me all the time. It's my job to manage AdWords campaigns that catches me all the time. I put a negative keyword in that triggers a warning because I have that same keyword as a keyword, a positive keyword for lack of a better term. So I get caught in saying, hey, dummy, you just put sofa as a negative keyword, but you're trying to sell sofas. You just negated 45 of your keywords, you know? So
right.
that kind of stuff, you may do it on a Friday afternoon on a whim, and then you come back a month later and realize, where's all my traffic? What happened to everything? You know, it's because you know, those little things like that, Google will warn you and you'll never know it unless you check the account.
Same thing, Chris. Sometimes if you're running broad modified or broad match keywords, you'll get a certain kind of traffic initially, and then something in the algorithms and all that stuff will change, and you'll start showing up on new keywords. And sometimes those new keywords aren't good. Like one time I had a moving company in the beautiful city of Waco, Texas, which I know you've have a reputation in. And
reputation. Yeah, I've robbed 4 banks there. Yeah, thank you.
Where I know you spent some time, let me say. And a moving company there. Turns out, Chris, not a big area. Had tough time spending $1,500 a month on a moving campaign there. And we were doing broad match because we need to get a bunch of volume, but there's not a ton of volume there. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, our broad keywords started picking up movie theater search terms, like movie theaters in Waco and all this kind of stuff. And that's not something I would have as a negative keyword from the start because there's no reason to. But we caught that because we're in the account every week. But if we didn't, that could potentially be hundreds or thousands of dollars over the course of years being wasted if you become a loser, a set it and forget it loser, as we call them. So, Chris, that is the mindset section of common pitfalls. Anything to add to that list, or do you think that pretty much covers the kind of mindset issues that you can run into as an AdWords user?
No, I think that's good. I think someone's mindset can definitely make a big difference. I'm curious to see what we got for technical. What technical aspects of a campaign setting, targeting, all that kind of stuff can make a big difference.
If you think mindset can mess you up, Chris, technical can supremely mess you up. This is where you can really do some self-damage in AdWords. The first one is your favorite, Chris. Search with display select. Running a display and search campaign at the same time, because, man, that is a great idea. Why don't you take us through that one?
I don't think there's anything else I could say that would be more eye-opening than I was once in a like a Google live stream or something like that. I mean, reading official Google documentation, and they said, do not use search with display select. Always split your display and split your search.
Right.
You didn't hear it from me, people. That was from Google, right? Google. So forget it. Don't do it.
Yep. But sometimes it is the default that they put campaigns in. So it's a little bit weird. But definitely don't run search with display. The reason why is your data gets all jumbled. You don't know where your ads are showing. You don't have a clear goal. And things usually don't work out well when you do that together. Next technical issue, Chris, is broad match only. And if we ask ourselves, what is the most common issue we see in accounts that we take over? Probably broad match only keywords.
Absolutely.
They're easy to add. You're going to get that nice little rush of traffic right from the start. You're definitely going to get clicks. You're going to spend your budget, but it's not always the best thing. And running broad match only can just show you up on way too much stuff. And Chris, I've actually am experimenting a little bit in my own campaign with broad match keywords with super low bids. And it's crazy the amount of stuff that you can show up on. It's just nuts. So running broad match only keywords as your only as the only keywords you run, that's kind of a technical mistake you and I see a lot. The next one, Chris, is lack of negative keywords. And why don't you clear up for us what that means?
Right. So I think the problem with negative keywords is there's not an option to immediately add them to the campaign. Let's say, you've set up plenty of new campaigns, right? If anyone's done this before, there's a step. It says start your first campaign. You click that button, it takes you through all the steps. You need to create your ad group. You need to create your ad. You need to add your keywords. Then you add your billing, and then you're going, right? And it will also remind you. It'll pop up there and say, hey, don't forget you. Yeah, I like that sound effect. That's royalty free, straight from my mouth. So it'll tell you, hey, don't forget about your ad extensions. It could really help if you put site links on here. All this kind of stuff. It'll remind you about that. No way do they remind you anywhere to put negative keywords. And I think this is a huge missing point for most campaigns is if you don't put a couple negative keywords. I mean, we've talked about links before in the past that we've shared with this huge master list that I use all the time of negative keywords. 500, 600 negative keywords that I think are really good default negative keywords to have. Doesn't mean you always copy and paste all of them. Sometimes you want to spot check, but very important, critical aspect to contain in your campaign.
Yeah, it's just so people know, two pros that do this, me and you. I always start AdWords campaigns with at least 100 to 200 negative keywords. Always, right from the start. And then I'm adding them for the first month almost every day, depending on how big the campaign is. Definitely every week.
Yeah.
And they're great. It's crazy how much, like today I added the word T-O, as a negative keyword, and it can just block so much garbage. So those help out a bunch, and not having them can supremely screw you up. So the next one, Chris, is going too fancy with your keywords. And this is something people from the marketing world, old school marketing, seem to bring to the table too often. And this is where you go too wide with your keywords, and you target things that are related but not relevant. So what example from the moving world is people might target the word moving boxes because their mindset might be, well, anyone searching moving boxes is going to need a mover at that same moment. But that's not the way things work, as you and I know. And especially at the beginning of a campaign, it's really smart to just stick to the bread and butter, something like movers Chicago, if you're in Chicago, movers near me, stuff that shows the person actually wants exactly what you offer at that exact moment. And stop with this marketing, get in front of the right audience stuff on search. That's not the place to start a campaign. Do you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. I hear it all the time from people, and you're right. It tends to be, as I said at the top of the show, it tends to be people who do not understand the basic idea of how AdWords works and what type of traffic quality it is that you want. If you're a plumber, you don't go after keywords that says, my toilet is broken, right? You wait for the people to decide that they want a plumber first. They're going to make that decision. So that's the kind of stuff you're going for.
Pat on my back. We got through a plumber discussion without any kind of gross, immature joking about poop, feces, stains, clogged toilets, mouse in the toilets.
Why are you still listing things?
Well, I'm just saying we got through
Mom,
a segment about
I didn't curse today at school today, Mom. I didn't say F or S or A.
Right. I'm just celebrating, Chris. We didn't talk about diarrhea. We didn't talk about diapers getting flushed down the toilet. We didn't talk about smells.
Why are we still here?
We didn't talk about
that are too small.
So I'm proud of us, Chris. So yes, the next one, Chris, talking about straight up scrubs, people that come to the table with thinking they're going to, part of it is small budgets. And then part of it is irrational thinking about what a small budget can do. People come to the table sometimes. Perfect example, carpet cleaners. They think they're going to spend $500 a month and get 20 cleaning jobs a month. How does that work when each click is like $10? The math doesn't work. And the biggest problem, Chris, with small budgets is when your daily budget gets too small to the average cost per click. Then you just get in big trouble because the system doesn't really work itself. So that's one of the biggest ways you can just shoot yourself in the foot right off the bat is not bringing a big enough budget to the table to start with. And sometimes, Chris, I've had people who try to advertise with me Their budget's too small. They don't have a website. Those two things, or a good website, those two things seem to go together. So I tell them, get your website up and running, save up for a budget to reinvest in your company, and come back later. So even though you can run super small budgets on AdWords, $300 a month, $500 a month, and it works, sometimes people just come too small. So the next thing, Chris, is settings. This is one of your favorites. You love to tell people where their traffic is coming from when you audit an account. So why does that mess people up right from the start?
Well, Jason, actually, I mean, yes, I do like to point this out. But honestly, here's the truth. I'm not gonna, this show is all about truth in AdWords, right? And the fact is,
Great. We should have named it that.
Truth and that is a good
Truth in AdWords.
I'm gonna start that podcast. The fact is, if let's say you don't choose advanced location settings so that you only get traffic within your targeted area. And here's the thing.
It's not the worst thing, but
we're talking about 5% of your spend. I would not, Jason, I mean, I know you're on a roll here, but I would not put this one as something why the campaign's not working right. I know. I just knocked you off your horse, but I don't think this fits in here. Don't walk out. Oh, you're
So Chris, I don't know why you're laughing, but I understand where you're coming from. But here, let me counterpunch you, because
okay.
I'm a counterpuncher. Let me counterpunch you. Do you ever go back into your settings and turn the advanced location setting back on to include people searching for? No, you don't.
Yes, I did it this week. I did it this week with a client who said,
that's because you suck. But I'm just kidding. Just kidding, Chris. I'm just kidding.
How's that? I thought we were having a friendly argument here. Now you're just throwing insult.
I'm sorry. All right.
A client said,
I'm curious to know where this came up. So
well, because a client said, it was a lawyer and said, I do get calls from people that are outside of the area that want to hire someone in my area that are searching. So, I do get calls from people like that say, hey, I'm in this area, but I need someone in this area.
The reason people listen to the show, Chris, is to get better at Google AdWords. So why don't I include you in that topic? In that group, and let me give you a little idea on how you can run this better. Okay, now, let's go deep. Let's dive deep, Chris. If you turn off your advanced location setting to only include people in your area, actually in your area, which is what you and I would do most times. Me, almost every time. You, most times.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that, then you only get traffic from in your area. And if someone wants traffic from people outside their area, searching about their area to hire someone in their area, you have two options. One is the way you do it. You just click on the setting, and if we get a little traffic from Egypt, a little traffic from India, who cares, as long as most of it, it's only 5%. Why don't you just put a gun to their head and take 5% of their money every month, Chris? Because it's only 5%. So, no, I hear you, and I know what you do. You go in there and you add those other areas as excluded locations. The problem is, for me, you have to add a ton of areas as excluded locations. So what I do, I create a sister campaign, call it the national campaign, target whatever area makes sense, like the United States, exclude the area your little lawyer is in, and then target broad match modified keywords, say he's a divorce lawyer in Memphis, divorce lawyers Memphis, divorce lawyers, family law lawyers Memphis, very locked down with broad match modified across the whole country, and then anyone searching for that sees the ads, and you don't have to deal with adding excluded locations. I hate that setting, Chris.
Yeah,
I hate it.
I like that,
but I hear you.
I like that. That's a good point.
Yeah, and honestly, I've had clients that have told me like, "Hey, we appreciate why you turned the setting off, but we want as much traffic as possible." Just like you, they don't care about a little bit if they can get a lot for it. So some people are very volume focused and they leave that setting on. But that's my opinion, Chris. And it's interesting we split there. So the next one up, Chris, is underbidding and overbidding. Do you ever run into this where people just bid way too low or bid way too high and spend up their budget?
No, not really. I know you probably are. No, I can't really think of another one that I really can think of on this. So yeah, I'm gonna just break your horse's leg and stop you right there, because I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if I have a campaign that's spending and doing well, I tend to increase the bids for those keywords. I mean, my strategy is typically to run the heck out of the stuff that's generating good traffic. And, you know, if I might be able to get more clicks on second position or third position, I really don't care, because if that keyword works for me, I want to be first every time for that keyword. I want to get I want to hoard as many conversions as possible for that kind of stuff. So I push hard, you know, on that, on those kind of keywords. So
I hear you. Now, honestly, you know what? You're right. I don't see it that often, underbidding or overbidding, but I was just thinking in the mindset of a new person to AdWords. If you get on there and say divorce lawyer clicks cost $15 and they think they're going to get clicks for $3 the first week, they don't get hardly any clicks. I can see that scenario.
I'd have to say, if someone's listening and they are living in a dream world, that AdWords is, I use this term loosely, but an affordable solution for getting traffic, cheaply. You're in for a world of hurt, because unless you're willing to go with the display network and just get a bunch of traffic and hope 0.1% converts, you're not going to get what you're looking for. AdWords is no longer the area where you can say, I want to lower my CPC. You don't get lower cost per click, just because you work a campaign really hard and you can drop a few percentage points off. It's not really about that. It's about getting a lower cost per acquisition. It's not necessarily a lower CPC, because when there's advertisers out there that are willing to outbid you, your quality score is only going to do you so much good. You're going to have to pay money. You're going to have to bring those bids up. Yeah.
That's a great point, Chris. AdWords is known, I think, for most people as the most efficient, effective way for, quote, small businesses to compete and market their companies. But just because it's good for small businesses and efficient and lower cost compared to like a huge TV campaign, that doesn't mean it's the cheapest thing on the block. Like, you've got to bring things to the table. You got to bring the right website. You got to bring the right intake, people answering the phones. You can't just throw a little bit of money at it and think it's going to work. You have to bid up for your keywords. And when you bid up, you have to make the most of that traffic. So Chris, that brings us to our next one. And this is just lack of relevance. So people run into this all the time when they start a campaign. It's having ads that don't match keywords in the ad group and landing pages that don't match ads or keywords in that ad group. And a lack of relevance will kill your quality scores really bad if it's really blatant, and that'll kind of kill your campaign right from the start, Chris. So anyone listening to this, I think it's a good practice. See what's getting the most clicks for you, your keywords, the most volume, like over the last month, and see if some of those ad groups don't make sense in terms of having two different types of keywords in those ad groups. Because as we talked about before, Chris, just putting keywords in new ad groups won't do anything for you.
Yep.
And that's something I think about all the time, because you found that great piece of documentation. And because I see that repeated every week falsely. But when you do change ad groups, it gives you the ability to tailor the ads and the landing page to those keywords. So relevance is key right when you start, Chris. And then the last couple here, Chris, to me, it's all about the phone. Like a lot of advertisers just run their ads when either they're not able to take calls or they don't take calls seriously enough. So do you see that on your dimensions tab, like a lot of missed calls? And whenever I see that, that's a huge red flag for the client.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's when I jump into a campaign, I'm looking at a campaign for the very first time, I'll see that the ads might run 24/7, and they're a service company and they're not an emergency service company. So they have off hours. And that's one of the first things, I'll notice, say, hey, I see a lot of calls that are, coming in and they're only 6 seconds long, or, you guys aren't answering the phone for a lot of these things or stuff like that. So I'd say if you're having an issue with, your campaign, you're not getting the leads, make sure you're only showing ads during times when you're willing to answer the phone. Because I'll tell you, I've talked to enough business owners, when it comes down to, most businesses, people like to call. That I would say that's typically the number one source of a lead, compared to anything, filling out forms and stuff like that. And most people that call are much more hot leads.
It's about to say that exact same thing, Chris. Yeah. I have a mover I'm working with. We're tracking lead forms, but we're not tracking website calls yet. and I've been trying to get him to make that commitment and track website calls. And he's saying, the leads we're getting, they seem to be more shopper people than what we get from Yelp and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, well, hey, that's because we're only doing people who only have enough interest to fill out a lead form and say, yeah, sure, call me back anytime over the next 2 days, as opposed to the people, man, I'm getting evicted on the 30th. I got to find a mover today. I'm picking up that phone and calling you. Yeah. It's all about the phone, Google AdWords.
Yeah, my toilet's overflowing. How about I fill out a form and wait for you to call me? No, that's not a hot lead. Absolutely not. Absolutely, and I'm not willing.
That's just not a hot lead in general. No. Like that's you don't want to be there. So, Chris, I've got a couple interesting, I would say, advanced technical issues, but you know what? Maybe I want to save them for the YouTube channel and have a little after-hour show one-on-one with the big guy here, Chris. So maybe I can entice you to stick around with me for a few minutes. But Chris, I think we went over good pitfalls and pretty much all the pitfalls that new to AdWords users can run into. Because nothing makes me sicker to my stomach, Chris, than someone who wants to try AdWords, who's going to try it, who thinks it's going to go great, and then because of their own issues doesn't have success with it. I love the platform. I know it can work for almost any kind of service business, especially. You just have to do some things right, and I think this episode is going to help people do things right off the bat, mentally wise and technical.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
Good stuff. So, Chris, you did such an awesome bang up job, bro, taking us out last time. Why don't you take us out again?
Okay. Well, thanks for listening. As Jason said, we are other places. You can see our faces on our website, paidsearchpodcast.com. You can interact with our faces on the famous Facebook page. And the Twitter account. All of that info can be found at our website, paidsearchpodcast.com. Be sure and check out our YouTube channel. We have some special stuff that we're working on there where you can watch our faces talk at the same time. Pretty fun stuff. So be sure and leave a review on our iTunes account. We appreciate those, and send in your comments, send in your questions. Jason's telling me I have to go. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
All right, Chris.
So this is after the show, right?
Well, you got to hit the end button.
No, this is it. This is after the show. We're going to end it, and this is it.
We're going to include that on the podcast video feed.
Yes.
Oh,
guys.
Wow, that is a new meaning to After Hours. Special bonus material.
Hello to everyone still watching.
Yeah, still watching. Chris, I was messing with you. Let me, why not just pause the audio? I was messing with you, showing you how that's a little distracting.
It is. It is difficult to talk while you're making faces at me. Thank you.
Dude, ISIS is in my house.
Yeah, I'm getting swatted. I'm getting swatted right now. I should
Chris,
do that to you sometime while we're recording. I should call in like a drug. That'd be funny.
I'd really appreciate that, Chris. That would be hilarious. So, so Chris, I was just thinking, this is a cool way to do the after shows. I was expecting a new video, but hey, I like it. So, Chris, a couple advanced things that show, because we were running out of time, and then also they're just not things that new advertisers run into. But one thing is broken or changed links on ads or site links. I run into this more than you would think.
Yeah.
And it's pretty sad because you can rack up a lot of spend just going to a 404 error page.
Not all error pages track as a page not loaded error page. I've found that if you have some systems will have an automated like, oh, you didn't find what you're looking for. Sorry, why don't you try this? And then it shows like a list of blog links or some kind of default thing. Google may not recognize that as a 404 error page. And what they'll do is, instead of saying, this ad's disapproved because it's triggering to a broken page, it'll keep running it. And unless you check those final URLs, you'll never know. So that's a very good point. And I have absolutely found that in the wild.
Yep. And now Chris, there's AdWords scripts out there that you can upload to your account that are supposed to scan site links and ads. Haven't done that yet. I'm kind of waiting for the software I use to make that a little more user friendly. I'm just not a guy who create scripts. I like to use the software. So you can check it that way. And then another way to check it is by looking at your conversion rates on ads. If you just notice an ad is just getting killed with a horrible conversion rate, maybe that's the reason why. And then finally, you can look at the analytics data, which you've talked about before. And if an ad has like a 90 plus 100% bounce rate over a lot of data, could be going to an error page accidentally. And I've had clients change up links on me, Chris. I've had agencies I work with have their clients change up links, and I'm two kind of Kevin Bacon's away, and it just doesn't get to me, and there's no way for us to know that those change. So that's really frustrating. That's a kind of a technical pitfall. The other one, Chris, is not auditing your data deeply enough. And so you may not like your conversion rate this month compared to last month. You may look at your search terms. You may look at your ads. You may look at your keywords, but sometimes that's not enough to catch what's going on. And what I love to do, Chris, is to look at the segment button at the campaign level and figure out, sometimes there's a few things going on. One, we've talked about this before. I was running big call only campaigns, or not, I wouldn't say big, but I was running them across multiple clients. And call only on the partner network, we weren't getting any calls, 0 over a ton of clicks. And I wouldn't have found that unless I dug deep and went on the segment button. The second way the segment button kind of plays a role, Chris, for me lately is I had a mover tie Google My Business, the location extension, to their AdWords account. So their address can show up with the ad. So like we always say, quality score can go up. You can get clicks on that address button. We started getting killed with conversion rates and conversions all of a sudden, and nothing had changed, like ads, keywords, like there wasn't anything glaring at us there. Turns out 30% of our traffic was clicking on the show directions to this location, or show directions to this business for a moving company. And people never hardly ever go to moving companies. So they were clicking on that. We weren't tracking the calls if we got them. They weren't going to the website and filling out the lead form. And I was like, what the heck? So I just turned it off for that account. And I don't know if there was something a little shady going on in New Jersey, which wouldn't be the first time in that state, let's be honest. Or I don't know if there was just some kind of technical issue. You know what I mean? But 30% of people clicking on the show directions to this business for a moving company, that's not good on an account that spends like $5,000 a month. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's, something I had never, that's the first time I'd ever heard you talk about that before. So that's a hot tip there.
Hot tip in the deep in the bonus land, Chris. So Chris, any other things to follow up on? Add any off topic things you want to talk about? This is the after hours show, bro. Spend a little time with me, Chris. That's it.
Well, no.
Okay. Well, hey, sometimes you just got to end things, Chris. I just want to say my ego is involved with this podcast now, Chris, after a year. Things are picking up. The numbers are going up, so I appreciate everyone listening. And I, for one, am excited about the YouTube channel, where this can go, because I know we're going to get a lot of newer views here as opposed to people who are more podcast people.
Yeah. If this is one of the first times we've directly spoken to the YouTube audience since we've started basically live streaming our podcasts here on YouTube. Right. So, the podcast doesn't go anymore. That's already been cut. So, for you guys who are listening.
This episode, by the way.
Yeah, this episode. Yeah, this episode. This last week was the first one. This is the second now. So, for you guys who are listening, we tell us your feedback, because you are a very specific audience that we'd love to hear from and know, what you think. I know I listen to some podcasts that have a YouTube channel and they just put their podcast on YouTube, and I just listen to it on YouTube. Let me know. Do you guys do that? Is that something that you do, or do you watch? I don't know how you could possibly listen and watch our face for this long. I have to say that's a long time to just stare into the eyes of a boring AdWords manager in the Midwest. But that's if you enjoy it, then more power. to you.
Yep. And this is also a great place to ask us your questions down in the comments.
Yes.
And then also, Chris, I'm thinking we get questions every single week through the contact form on our website. Not every week do those questions match up with podcasts, or sometimes they'll never match up on a podcast because they're a little bit. But I think I do want to answer them for sure. And I think YouTube would be a great place to just make little 3-4 minute videos and answer those people. And also when you're answering questions, Chris, you can become more expressive and kind of get one-on-one with the person, and they can kind of see what your answer looks like as well. So with that said, Chris, we're reversing roles today. You're wrapping up the podcast. I'm wrapping up the YouTube, and we hope the whole world is wrapping up. So
that's a great one. You made mine look really good. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.